Howdy, old-fashioned cowboys, cowgirls, vaqueros y vaqueras. Bienvenido! We've got a score to settle. That's right, folks. Today we're exposing another lie generated by anti-freedom, anti-life advocates, or more commonly known as anti-gun rights activists. Before we get into it, we gotta lay down some foundation, per se. We're gonna have some definitions to help us narrow down the truth. A gun-free zone is any property line, government or otherwise, requiring persons to refrain from bringing in weapons or face repercussions. Active shootings are defined as incidents where an individual or pair of individuals intentionally and indiscriminately shoot at bystanders. So, folks, here we got an article from AP News going against the narrative that mass shootings do in fact occur in gun-free zones. So, of course, it's going to be somebody named Philip Marcello. But anyways, states here more than 90% of all mass shootings have happened in so-called gun-free zones. Now, it's already setting the tone here, putting down advocates of gun rights. Okay, thanks for the attitude. Unnecessary, but okay. Missing context. The off-cited figure comes from a study by a gun rights advocacy group that gun violence experts say is flawed. Now, if you look around here, folks, there ain't no links or specific information of these so-called experts, gun violence experts. I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that they're good at spreading gun violence? I don't know what that means, folks. Let's continue here. They say the study draws from federal data on active shooter incidents, which is not the same as a mass shooter. So they're arguing semantics here instead of actually addressing the problem. So let's continue. It also excludes gang-related incidents. Yes, by definition, it is not a mass shooting. Gang-related is targeted. They're targeting the gang. Even in all shootings, it is possible that a stray shot can go and hit another, but that is not the objective of a mass shooter. A mass shooter is indiscriminately targeting everybody. That gang-related incident is targeted. And yes, it also includes military bases. As a veteran, I can tell you for sure that the majority of military bases do not have weapons in the barracks rooms, in offices. The weapons are stored in an armory. We do not have access to weapons in the military for the most part, unless you're on like a position of duty where you are required to carry a weapon, which is not the majority of people. It is less than a handful of people at most times. There is no definitive data on how many mass shootings occur in gun-free zones because there is no consensus on how to define either term. Now, this is an absolutely disgusting, repulsive, idiot, irrational argument to me. So we're gonna ignore active shootings and mass shootings because of semantics. Yes, let's not address the problem that precipitates because we can't agree on how to define a term. That is absolutely preposterous. Now here we go. The facts. In the wake of Monday shootings, a Christian school in Nashville. Social media users are sharing a post that claims nearly all mass shootings happen in designated gun-free zones where firearms are expressly prohibited, which is the right, folks. Yes, these media users, whoever they are, they're right. This is where the majority of mass shootings occur, where the guns are not allowed, free of the guns. Now, let's look into this Monday shooting. All right, Nashville shooting timeline. What we have so far. Okay, so 3 children and 3 adults were killed in this incident. And it happened in approximately 15 minutes. All right, let's see the timeline. All right, Hale arrived by a car in an expansive parking lot Monday, according to a timestamp on edited school surveillance video. All right, so the school has a surveillance security system in place. I hope that they have a security officer who is watching it, right? That is armed to deal with some sort of situation that will require an armed security guard to be there. Hale drove past someone who appears to be a maintenance worker standing on the sidewalk and later children on swings in the playground before parking the car. Now, folks, I don't know how many people you've met, but there are so many people just wandering around like just going through the motion. Now, of course, they're not always going to notice some suspicious behavior or individual nearby. I can't blame them for that, and these are just children. So they passed a maintenance worker and some children on swings. Now at 10:11 a.m., the gentleman with 2 assault gentlemen, this man's a piece of shit. I take that back. Anyways, this piece of shit, with weapons of handgun, he dressed in camouflage and a vest. All right, and he shot out some glass doors. As soon as these glass doors hit, there should be an automatic response to a mass shooting incident. That doesn't seem like that's what happened, but let's continue. Surveillance video timestamps. He kicked away the shots, ducked under a doorway crossbar, and entered the school. At this point in time, the teachers who should be armed, or if unarmed, the teachers who are armed or security guards who are armed should be locking down the school. There should be some sort of a program where the teachers are locking the doors immediately and all students are being escorted into a safe area and security should be responding with weapons, of course. Preferably, some of the teachers should have weapons. There should be some sort of training program of some sort, a background check where these teachers are provided an opportunity to be able to protect not only the students but themselves and co-workers. Now 911 calls and response time. Now, folks, it takes time to respond. It is a response. It's going to take time for these officers to get there and terminate the threat. It took 15 minutes before the shooter was taken out by the police. That's 15 minutes this scum of the earth has taken the lives of God's children and some other faculty. In one 76-year-old retired church member, Tom Pulliman, tells the dispatcher he is with a group of people, including several children, who are walking away from the Christian school toward the main road when the dispatcher requests a description of the shooter. Okay, what did me see. Let's see. All I saw was a man holding an assault rifle, shooting through the door. He's currently in the second grade hallway upstairs. Now, see, this is good, folks. We need people that immediately see something like, if you see somebody shooting an assault rifle into a building, yeah, that's something that you definitely need to call in. But we pretty much get the picture here. Okay, so let's continue with the article. The facts, 92 to 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. I don't know if it's 92, 98%, but it's gotta be at least, I'm gonna say 75. At least 75%, even if it was 51% of the time. If it was 51% of the time, I would still encourage weapons to be widely available to everybody. So let's continue. Today was yet another example of that. Reads the Instagram post. Great job on the gun-free school zones at Clinton and Biden. Now, I don't appreciate them, quoting somebody and then not leaving some sort of source to the post, see the reference and understanding of this individual or entity involved. So you can just see how AP News, its integrity as a news institution is a failure, complete failure. You can't take these people seriously. Perhaps we could just blame Mr. Marcelo Phillip for this, and they need to fire the man, take down this article, or have a rebuttal, because this is absolutely absurd. The post refers to a 1990 law that made it illegal for anyone to possess firearms in school zones unless part of a school program or by law enforcement. It was signed into law when former Democratic President Bill Clinton was in office and current President of Joe Biden served as Democratic U.S. Senator from Delaware. All right, let's take a look at that law. All right, here we go. So it's going to be the 101st Congress, second session, amendment to Title 18 United States Code to prohibit possessions or discharge of a firearm in a school zone. Okay, well, see, this was a bad idea. Clearly. It's been going downhill ever since. And this law's been going on since the 1990s. So for almost, I want to say, nearly 30 years. 3 decades. And three decades and a half. And we are still allowing our children, our family members, our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, our mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers, aunties, uncles, nephews, and all the like to continue to be in this state of fear where they cannot protect themselves, where the government or private institutions do not provide some sort of security force or police force that reacts to said violence. And by the way, folks, this is a big misconception. I'm sure most people don't know, but there is no constitutional obligation that law enforcement has to protect its citizens. There is several Supreme Court cases. As a matter of fact, there was one extreme case that I recall where 3 women were called the law enforcement in response to, I believe it was a domestic violence incident. and they did not show up. They just didn't show up. It's not that they were late 30 minutes. They just didn't show up, folks. So this is just ridiculous to just strip people basically of a God-given right, not only God-given but also constitutional right to protect yourself from harm. All right, let's continue, folks. The figure comes from a study by gun rights advocacy group, the Crime Prevention Research Center. The group in 2018 asserted that 94% of mass public shootings since 1950 happened in gun-free zones. The group's president has pointed out the figures to argue that gun-free zones invite mass shootings. But gun violence experts, again, this vague gun violence experts, caution. And what's the caution? Why would you caution a scientific study? What, because the truth might get out? Anyways, I digress. The conclusion that's drawn from it is there is flawed. Okay, for one thing, looking at gun violence data from 1950 to 1990 is irrelevant. How is that irrelevant? What, you think in the 1950s and 1990s there weren't government buildings or private institutions or entities that were requiring people to not bring firearms into the stores? Or could you make the assertion possibly that there was places where people did not normally carry firearms and yet there was still incidents where mass shootings occurred? So how could you possibly come to this conclusion? Many states banned or heavily restricted concealed firearms during that period, according to Daniel Webster, a scholar of Johns Hopkins University Center for Gun Violence Solutions in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, that is confusing, so we're just gonna ignore that. That he argued would make almost in any public mass shooting during those years as having take place in a gun-free zone. Webster and other, we for the first time, we finally got some sort of expert reference. Also argued that the center's study wrongly classifies places where armed officers are stationed, such as military bases, as gun-free zones. It also excluded gang-related shootings and other mass shootings related to other major crimes. Now, of course, folks, again, they're repeating themselves. It makes no sense. Yes, military bases are essentially gun-free. You drive up to the majority of military bases. There is a sign that literally says no firearms, no weapons, no knives as you come into these bases. Simply ridiculous. What a dumb argument. Again, excluding of course, gang-related shootings are excluded. They are targeted. They're targeting the gangs. It is not indiscriminate. That defies logic. We'll say, I guess Webster is illogical for thinking that it defies logic. Of course, here we go. Again, military bases and secure. If it's so secure, these locations, why are there mass shootings on them? Okay, whatever. Not only are guns allowed in this place, which they're not. Guns are stored and maintained. And often they are 100% to have someone armed, trained, paid, and under orders to protect against public mass shootings. So are the police, yet mass shootings occur anyways, or security guards for that matter. And actually, in most cases, the security forces do not respond in time or do not have the capability of being able to respond to such an incident. What's more, the center's study relies on the FBI's data on active shooter incidents, which isn't the same as mass shootings. Alright, regardless if this is the FBI's data or any other data source, it is data. It is simply a form of collecting information to be able to provide an accurate depiction of the truth. Which isn't the same as a mass shooting, said Jacqueline Schillenkraut, executive director of the Rockefeller, here we go. These guys, Institute of the Government Region's Gun Violence Research Consortium in Albany, New York. Alright, well, obviously, by name, we can't trust these individuals. Alright, I digress. That's another whole topic, a whole other can of worms to get into that we ain't gonna get into right now, folks. You could have 0 fatalities and injuries and be included in that data, she wrote in an email. Not every active shooter event goes on to become a mass shooting either. In response, Joan Laut, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, argued that the exclusion of shootings stemming from gang violence or other crimes is appropriate. In an email Wednesday, he said, the causes and solutions of those violent incidents are dramatically different from those of typical mass shootings where the aim is generally to kill or injure as many people possible, which is correct. Law also argues that classifying military bases and other locations where armed officers or securities are present is also appropriate. Which makes sense because the majority of individuals in the base are not allowed, period, to have a weapon on their persons for the purposes of self-defense. What you need to understand is that Fort Hood is no different than a city where only the military police are allowed to carry guns. He wrote, referring to Texas Army base that has been the site of mass shootings in 2009 and 2014. The attackers of Fort Hood. I believe it is right here. Yes. Alright, so this was a very sad incident. Of course, they're all sad, but killing 3 people and wounding 6 others before this gentleman committed suicide. Now, that, of course, is a mass shooting. Alright, there was no indication that the attack was related to terrorism. Alright? So, of course, these situations are going to happen when you don't have armed individuals being able to deter some sort of threat like this happening. Law also argues that classifying military bases and other locations where officers or securities are present are also appropriate. That's right. Okay, and if the earliest decades of the center study are excluded, Laudy said his research still shows that 87% of mass shootings occurred in gun-free zones from 1990 through this Monday. Researchers say competing studies pushed by gun control advocacy groups also have their shortcomings. A study of every town for gun safety, for example, found that between 2009 and 2016, just 10% of mass shootings took place in gun-free zones. Most mass shootings, the group found, occur in private incidents that are not considered gun-free. Now, I took a look at this, folks. Now, let's take a look at this article. Now, this article is completely irrelevant. So the source that they provided is ridiculous. It shouldn't have been used as a source. Now, take a look here. We now define a mass shooting as any incident in which 4 or more people are shot and wounded or killed, excluding shoot. Now this makes absolutely no sense. The whole point of a mass shooting is for it to be indiscriminate, unbiased. It's supposed to be multiple individuals, not targeted. Now, for there to be 4 person, so what if it was two or 3 people, yet the target was eliminated? You know, even by somebody that was armed in that situation before it could become what they classify as a mass shooting. Now, this is another example of why AP News is, well, at least I speak for this. I speak for this individual in particular. This Marcelo is definitely giving a bad light to AP News. Now, let's continue here. But every town defines a mass shootings as one in which 4 or more people, excluding the shooter, died. That likely underestimates the true number of mass shootings, since it does not account for incidents in which many are badly injured but few died, according to the experts. They said they did mention being wounded. So look at this. They even the source that they are quoting from, they misquoted it. And folks, this is just absurd. This is why we gotta be very careful when we analyze our media. Our information that is given to us is definitely being portrayed in a manner that is going to dissuade or provoke people in a manner that is an emotional response with no logic behind it. And it's going to lead to more of these incidents occurring. Part of the problem is that there isn't a generally accepted definition of what constitutes a mass shooting. Shirkraut and others say, here we go again. Here we go again. Of course, there's also no good way to verify whether every single location analyzed in a study is in fact a gun-free. Of course it is. You can look at the laws. You can look at the policies of the store. You can, there is so many ways to justify this. There's no good way. What does that mean? Does it mean that you verify something? This mean that it's going to disprove your argument? So that means that it's not a good way to verify. For example, experts noted that Laudi's report counts a 2015 shooting at Umpqua's Community College in Oregon as happening at a gun-free zone, even though the college allowed people with a concealed carry permit to bring firearms on campus. Locked in a blog post, he has disputed these concerns. Now, yes, we got to check that out. All right, Lord, where are you at? Okay. Here we go. So, the Associated Press has an article claiming that our claim that this attack didn't occur in a gun-free zone. In emails, the AP article's author pointed to an article by PolitiFact. PolitiFact pointed to a statement by a spokesperson for the Umpqua Community College that said it wasn't a gun-free zone, and the people concealed handgun permits were allowed to carry. They also point to one person who carried a permitted concealed handgun or another part of the campus at the time of the attack. We have 3 points of the response based on our original post below. Below, we have a link to the primary source from the rules that existed in Umpqua Community College. The website is clear and offers no exceptions for concealed handgun permits, and that website, of course, folks, is here. Now, you can see this is an archived document website where you can take a look here. Safety and security info. Animals, that's not what we're interested in. Here we go. Where are we going? Dangerous devices. That's correct. Possessions, use, or threatened use of firearms, including but not limited to BB guns, air guns, water pistols, and paint guns. See, folks, this is including weapons that are not deadly, all being classified as threatening and being eliminated. Ammunitions, explosives, dangerous chemicals, or any other objects as weapons on college property except as expressly authorized by law or college regulation is prohibited. There you have it, folks. Let's continue. The students can't call up the spokesman or the 2 university presidents, we quote. Instead, they will look at the website for information on whether they can carry. Of course, hearsay. Yes, one student did carry a permitted concealed handgun in a different part of the campus, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't have had more if you had posted people were allowed to carry it. So they bring up an individual who actually, if he was there, or her, if she was there, could have probably prevented this situation from occurring, but was not, in fact, there. But we're not going to play the whole what-if game, folks. Don't worry about that. In short, I would say that the 10% number is too low, but the 98% statistic is too high in terms of percentage of mass shootings that occur in legally designated gun-free zones. Sis Kraut wrote in an email. Now, folks, you can see that AP News is, at the very least, Philip Marcello, they have a political agenda here, and it's to restrict freedom and promote anti-life. Now, I wanted to take a look here at a history of mass shootings that have occurred. Of course, this is Wikipedia, whether you like it or not. This is a somewhat reliable source to use. Just to have a quick reference on things. Now, we're going to look at some of the incidents here, and we're going to say whether these were mass shootings or not. Let's see, March 1st, 2026. In 2026, Austin Bar, a man opened fire on West 6th Street, firing into a bar at people in the surrounding area, killing 3 people and injuring 15 others. The shooter was killed by the responding officers. Now, a bar, folks. I've never been to a bar where guns are permitted. They frisk you at the door, they ID you at the door before you can get in. February 16, 2026, the 2026 Patchwork shooting. A woman shot 5 of her family members, killing her ex-wife and their son, and leaving 3 injured. Now, this, folks, this is definitely a targeted shooting. A woman shot 5 of her family members. This is not a mass shooting. This is a targeted event. If others were injured, they were not the primary targets in this incident. And where does this occur? At a high school hockey game. Now, where, folks, is gun-free zones at? That's right, folks. High schools are included among gun-free zones. Now, let's continue. Another one, Brown University. Of course, another gun-free zones. Let's see. Let's continue. 2025, Stockton shooting. A shooting at a birthday party and a banquet. I tell you, most private properties have some sort of policy that will trespass anybody who brings any kind of weapon onto the property. So this is most likely, this banquet hall is going to have some sort of stipulation that says you cannot bring weapons in. And yet there was a mass shooting that occurred. So yes, we are going to classify that. 2025 St. Helena Island shooting. All right, St. Helena at a bar. Okay, again, a bar. People are not allowed to have weapons there. A high school. Let's continue. Downtown Montgomery. All right, downtown Montgomery, Alabama. Let's take a look at that one. That sounds very vague. Was it in the middle of the street? Let's see. Alabama had the fourth highest. Okay. At the time of the attack, the downtown was crowded due to visitors being in the city for the annual Alabama National Fair and college football game. All right, folks. This is interesting. Now, let's look at, okay, the intersection, all right, okay. A gunfire broke out, quickly responded. Okay, apprehended. All right, there seems to be like no information on whether this downtown area was cordoned off so folks could walk down the street to the location. But typically in these major events, you'll have barricades of the police protecting these individuals, and nobody is allowed to carry these firearms into like stadiums. There's metal detectors and all kinds of things. So it's not surprising that this would be another mass shooting. And essentially, this area was possibly turned into a gun-free zone. Now, with the information given here, I cannot verify whether those parameters were in place or not, but it is very likely to suggest as such. Let's continue. The 2025 Grand Blanc Township church attack. Now, I believe most churches have also some sort of policy with regards to not allowing weapons on the premises. So, yet again, another gun-free zone. Now, this is not me advocating for guns to be in the church. It should be a holy place. However, considering recently how people are barging into churches and causing all kinds of ruckus and also these mass shootings, I think it's a great, probably a good idea to start implementing some sort of training measures and policies where some individuals should be carrying firearms. Hell, I think it's even a good idea for the pastor to bring in their own firearm. Protect the flock. I mean, it is in the Bible. All right, 2025 Southport shooting. A man on a boat coming from Cape Fear opened fire on an outdoor bar shore, killing 3 people and wounding 6 others. Now, again, folks, this was at a bar where people do not carry firearms. They're not allowed to carry firearms. As a matter of fact, I believe there are some cases where it is illegal to have a carry the influence. 2025 Cordis Township shooting. A man ambushed police officers investigating the property of a woman south of Spring Grove. Now, folks, again, some of these should not be classified as mass shooting. This is a targeted attack of police officers. This is not a mass shooting. This is targeted. Mass shooting means indiscriminate. All right, here we go. August 27, 2025, Minneapolis. Annunciation, another Catholic church shooting. There's probably no weapons allowed in this church. August 1st, 2025, Anaconda, Montana. A man is suspected of opening fire at a bar. Yeah, people sure do like shooting at bars. July 28, 2025, mass shooting. A man opened fire at 345 Park Avenue, Midtown Manhattan. Now, I gotta tell you, folks, New York City is New York State for that matter is pretty much a gun-free state. You've got to jump through so many hoops to be able to own a firearm. It's practically impossible to be able to own a firearm and be able to defend yourself with it in New York. So I'm gonna classify any state for that matter that has such a restrictive gun laws and have mass shootings occur makes sense because the citizens and security don't have access to these firearms with which criminals will have access. Anybody who's breaking the law, they're choosing to make that choice. The law is not gonna stop them just because it inherently exists. Just because the law exists doesn't mean now people are all of a sudden just gonna change their mind. Oh, this is a gun-free zone. We're not gonna bring guns here. Now, for the most part, a lot of these criminals, they buy their weapons illegally off the black market. Let's continue. Lexington shootings. A man shot a state trooper. That's a targeted shooting. 2025 Chicago shooting. A drive-by of an outside restaurant rapper's album. Of course, that's targeted. That's not indiscriminate. April 17th, Florida State University. That's, of course, folks, another gun-free zone. A Memorial Hospital, another gun-free zone. You can't bring weapons into hospitals, folks. New Orleans truck attack. Okay, this was a terrorist attack. This isn't supposed to be here. All right. Another school. Orlando Halloween shooting. All right. This seems to be indiscriminate. Let's see. It was in the festivities. So let's say if it was in the festivities, that means that there was some sort of checkpoint, supposedly, where people should be going through metal detectors, right? Victims, aftermath, suspects charged, recreations. Orlando Mayor Buddy announced a local state of emergency. Orlando's downtown entertainment area. Of course, again, there doesn't seem to be any information on the parameters, the security parameters of the Orlando downtown midtown. All right, let's see. Check it out here. Okay. Well, it's a restricted area, but this does not necessarily define whether the area itself is being protected or not. Perhaps here, this will help a bit. Nighttime life, okay. So it seems as though this is some sort of protected area where people, yes, it does seem like the public doesn't have, let's see if there was some, I believe that may be it being blocked over here. But if anybody does know, please place it in the comments section below to see if whether this area was cordoned off, whether there was security measures in place, and whether this area, this Orlando Entertainment District, is considered a gun-free zone where weapons are not allowed on the premises. Over here, the Birmingham shooting in a South neighborhood at a bar, of course, another bar. Interstate Kentucky shooting. Alright. A lone gunman shot civilians passing by on cars. Okay. This, folks, is definitely indiscriminate. Now, cases like this is specific. People passing by in these cars probably, it's going to be a quite difficult shooting back while you're driving by. It's a quick event, so there's not much room for being able to participate in self-defense. Now, folks, I think I could keep going, folks, but look, it's another school. This was an assassination attempt that's not related. Florence shooting. Residents. Let's see here. We can check this one out as well. This will be the last one, folks. Let's see here. Shooting. A birthday party, 21-year-old was being hosted at his mother's house. 44-year-old Melissa Parrott. Chase Garvey, who was not an attendee of the Garvey, arrived at the home outside, and this was definitely a unfortunate event. Okay, occurred. All right, so this gentleman just decided to show up to a party. So, folks, you see, I'm not sure whether this family had a weapon or not, but do be careful who you do open your doors to. There are some very sick people out there. Now, folks, that's going to conclude our breakdown of these people here that do not care about the actual citizens. They have this fantasy in their minds of what the reality should be here in America, and we're going to end it here on that note, folks. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for coming out, cowboys, cowgirls, vaqueros y vaqueras. Stay free, stay frosty.